Friends, what's up? What's happening? If you are here for an episode of Coffee and Kernels, you've come to the right place. I'm Bryce. This is the Bankrupt Pippa YouTube channel, and this is another episode of Coffee and Kernels where we talk all about the world of movies, video games, TV shows, and all that other great stuff. Another great show for you here today. And now the fact of the matter is it's December 4th, the day I'm recording this. It's Saturday evening, and we're getting toward Christmas, my favorite time of the year. I don't know about y'all, but I have been procrastinating shopping for my family and relatives, and it's a problem. But I do bring good news. I ended up buying my cousin her presents today, but I forgot one of her other smaller presents, so I've got to get that yet. I can't say what it is out loud in case she happens to find this. She won't be watching this until years down the road, probably. But nevertheless, I still have to get my mom her last present too, so keep your fingers crossed for me. Hopefully I'll buy the things in time for them to ship, because with the supply chain problems and whatnot and shipping is getting delayed, I get a little nervous. But I'm sure you're all in the same boat as I am. But anyways, I'll start off this episode with the weekly recap. For whatever reason, I've had a really hard time talking on camera lately. I did my Encanto review earlier. Oh my god, that was a nightmare trying to talk on camera. But anyways, we'll go into my weekly recap for this week. I'll talk about my most anticipated movies for the month of December, because it's December now, and I forgot to do this segment on the last episode of Coffee and Kernels, and I didn't do an episode last week because of the fact that it was Thanksgiving, and I didn't feel like doing an episode over the weekend, so take that for what it's worth. I'm sorry for y'all if you missed this particular podcast, but anyways, then after that, we'll go into some box office results from Thanksgiving weekend, which was a really quiet box office weekend as far as I'm concerned. I'll give you my random thought of the week, and then I'll give you my weekly recommendations to start off the episode. I'll have a lot more movie recommendations for this week because it's Christmas, and I want to give you one movie per day leading all the way up to Christmas, because I want to keep that holiday cheer going for you guys as much as I enjoy it. So anyways, we'll start off with the weekly recap. So I've already talked about my procrastination on finishing shopping for gifts for my relatives. I won't bore you anymore with that, but I've been playing a game within the last 2 weeks called A Plague Tale: Innocence that a coworker actually recommended to me, and wow, is this game quite good. I was this close, guys. I was this close to dropping off of the face of the earth with this game, because I played like 10 minutes of it one night before I went to bed. I wasn't really feeling it, and then I was like, you know what, I'll give it another shot, and by God, am I happy I stuck with it. A Plague Tale: Innocence, for those of you who don't know, for one, it's on Game Pass, and two, it's about this girl who basically her family gets slaughtered in front of her, and she has to take care of her brother, who she's never really known, because her brother has a certain condition that her mother's been caring for his entire life and has kept him in isolation. And so they have to basically outrun the Inquisition, because this is in 14th century France, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a really awesome game. I highly recommend checking it out, because I have been playing it nonstop. Of course, I have taken some breaks in between to make these videos and also to play other games that I've purchased, including Resident Evil 3. I finally bought Resident Evil 3 after wanting to buy it since it came out, but since it's a shorter game, from what I've heard and seen, I wanted to wait till it was at a price that I could comfortably buy it at. I bought it for $13. Shout out to Xbox and Microsoft for that, because they gave me a $5 gift card. But anyway, Plague Tale: Innocence. Been playing that like crazy. I'm almost to the end. I want to finish it so I can move on to my other games this holiday season. Resident Evil 3 would be up next, then Resident Evil 8. Also, Crash Bandicoot was on sale for Black Friday. I've been wanting that game for a long time. A classic from when I was younger, so I went ahead and bought the Insane Trilogy. So that's also in the list, among other games as well. Hellblade is also in that list too. I got a lot of games to catch up on. But I reviewed Encanto today, actually. I finished that recording. I got the video up a lot faster. I really enjoyed Encanto. It had this certain flavor, this Latin American flavor that I was expecting out of it, but I didn't know how much I'd really enjoy it and how much it fit into the identity of the movie until I actually watched it. And this movie, it's so well done. I don't know how else to really say it. It talks about the family dynamic, and you really the movie does a great job of helping you find yourself within a lot of these characters within it. And you really see just the more human side of the entire story, whether or not be on the mental health aspect of things, whether it be the family dynamic thing, where, you know, you've always got the family outcast. You might have the family member who's trying to cope with having unrealistic expectations, or a ton of expectations. Maybe you're the youngest or oldest sibling, and you have to kind of be the responsible one, quote unquote. And the weight that comes with that, I just thought it was fascinating, the movie exploring families. So I highly recommend checking it out. If you are an adult looking to take your kids to something, they'll enjoy this too. It's pretty, it's colorful, it's beautiful, and they might even have some of their own takeaways. They'll be entertained by it, and so will you. So great family movie all the way around. Another obsession that I've been having for the last week, although it's waned a little bit since this morning, I got obsessed with Spider-Man over Thanksgiving. I ended up watching both Far From Home. Finally, Far From Home has been on my list for a long time, and I'm so happy I finally got around to watching it. The main reason being is because of the fact that on Black Friday it was $10 4K Ultra HD, but I couldn't find it because it sold out within minutes. But I ended up deciding to rent it because I'm like, I've been procrastinating on this long enough. I have the time to watch it. I'll go ahead, sit down, watch it, review it. I really enjoyed it. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. From what I had heard about Far From Home, I heard it was absolutely phenomenal. It didn't live up to that expectation for me, but I still thought it was a pretty great movie. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I liked it better than Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming I thought was good, but I thought it felt a little too hollow. For whatever reason, it didn't have enough substance for me to really latch onto, but Far From Home was a step up from it, and I really enjoyed it, apart from having what I'd call weak character antagonists, but that's a whole nother story. But then I also discovered Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That was also on 4K HD for Black Friday. I decided to go ahead and buy it. I haven't bought a physical copy of a movie in a long time. Actually, since 2 years ago, since I bought the John Wick movies on 4K. They're still in the shrink wrap. Can you believe that? I've had those sitting in my room for 2 years. 2 years. I bought them on Black Friday for dirt cheap. I still haven't watched them yet. And out of all movies to watch in 4K Ultra HD, John Wick would definitely be a good candidate for that, because seeing blood, gore, and violence in Ultra HD, guys, there's just nothing like it. But anyways, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I had heard phenomenal things about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse again, and I didn't know what to really expect going into it. Animated comic book stuff usually isn't my speed, and really Spider-Man in general isn't really my speed, but I decided, hey, I'll give it a shot. I've heard ranting, raves, and reviews, and I can see why. I really, really enjoyed Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I enjoyed it more than Far From Home, but not by a long shot. But it was really refreshing to see a new take on Spider-Man, and the fact that you get a different character being the hero in Miles Morales. Since the dawn of live-action Spider-Man movies, since I'm going back to Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in this case, Spider-Man has been Peter Parker, Peter Parker's been Spider-Man, but now we get a very much expanded mind when it comes to the Spider-Man character, and I found that really refreshing with Miles Morales. It feels culturally different. The movie in and of itself has tones that are different. Miles is more of an artist, more of an adolescent youth than Peter Parker is in this case, and it's kind of fun because Peter Parker is really training him to be Spider-Man in his own world. You'll have to watch the movie to really understand where I'm coming from. If you're watching this podcast, there's a likelihood you are very familiar with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but if you're not, do yourself a favor and go watch it. It is definitely worth watching. I was pretty enamored with it. I liked it all the way around. The voice casting was great. Jake Johnson, for me, actually really stole the show in that movie as Peter B. Parker, because he gave a phenomenal voice performance. And as a fan of Jake Johnson, I really appreciated his work in here, and I really enjoy his stuff in the likes of New Girl. There's a movie he did a while back now. God, this had to be 2014 when he did Let's Be Cops. That's another really good one that I enjoyed, but nevertheless, Jake Johnson did great in that. But so that was my Spider-Man obsession for the week. I've since kind of waned back on that because I don't want to get tired of Into the Spider-Verse. When I get obsessed with the movie, what I'll typically do is I'll watch it like every night of the week. I'll go to bed, I'll have it playing on in the background as I'm falling asleep, and for whatever reason this morning I woke up, I'm like, you know what, I don't feel like watching Into the Spider-Verse again. I just didn't need to watch it. The movie had its flaws. Overall, I thought it was a great movie, though. And then lastly, going into this episode, initially, I didn't know what streaming movie I was going to review for this week. And the more that the days go by and the faster this holiday season goes, I mean, God, I blinked and Thanksgiving's over already. Halloween came and went, and now the same has been for Thanksgiving. I'm like, why don't I review a Christmas movie every week for December? It only makes sense. Good to get in the holiday season. And I've been putting out a short video each and every day on all of my social platforms about a movie to recommend for each day leading up to Christmas, I guess I should say. So For this week, I'm going to review Elf. I actually just finished watching it before recording this episode, and when I was younger, I'll cut to the chase. I'll just say what my verdict was. I still think this movie is quite great 15 years later. I think Elf came out in 2004, if I'm not mistaken. For me, it still holds up as a really joyous, innocent Christmas movie. Having said that, the movie has a lot more flaws than I remember it having, and thus I'm not going to give it like an insanely great score. But it's still really fun. Will Ferrell really carries the movie by and large. Zooey Deschanel, that was back in her earlier days when you didn't really know who Zooey Deschanel was. That was one of her earlier movies, and she didn't really get her stardom and hit her stride up until, I would argue, New Girl, which is years later. But anyways, the movie still held up really well. Will Ferrell, James Caan, Zooey Deschanel, all of them were great. All of them were really excellent in the movie, and it was I found it to be fun. The second half, it was really weird because I think the first half spent a little bit too much time in build up, and you really don't get to the second half until like the last half hour of the movie. And even within that last half hour, it feels really rushed. So as you get older and you start to recognize those things, it changes your perspectives on movies. I was really young in 2004 when I saw this with my grandma, but I didn't notice things like that because I was too young to notice. But now that I'm older, I notice these things. So keep your eye out for that review. Should be coming out earlier this week. But that'll do it for the weekly recap. So then now let's start to get into my most anticipated December movies. So as you guys know, about every fourth episode of Coffee and Kernels at the end of the previous month and the beginning of the current month, I always like to do my most anticipated movies that are going to be debuting because it helps keep you guys up to date and you're on your radar of what's going on. It also helps me assess what I'm excited for and maybe something to keep your eyes on. So without further ado, I'll go in chronological order for this month. I'm mainly excited for 3 movies. There are more I probably could have put on this list, but I decided not to just because I'm just being honest. I am excited for West Side Story, which is going to be coming out next week, and I believe on December 10th, if my math is right. Then I'm also really excited for Matrix Resurrections, and then of course Spider-Man No Way Home, because unless you've been living under a rock, everyone has been talking about Spider-Man No Way Home, especially in the movie sphere. But anyways, I'll start off with West Side Story. West Side Story is a musical adapted to the big screen, and for me, I have never been a fan of musicals, if I'm being honest. I remember going to plays with my mom when I was younger, and I really enjoyed plays. I really enjoyed performances, and I remember seeing my first musical. I don't remember what the musical was, but I remember just hating the fact that all they did was sing. That just really bothered me. To me, is singing your way through every single piece of dialogue, it really detracts meaning from it, but for whatever reason, from then I just didn't like musicals. Now that I've gotten a little bit older, my tastes have changed, and that's the case with West Side Story. West Side Story is directed by Steven Spielberg, and it's gotten rave reviews out of the gate, and that's kind of pumped me up a little bit. Plus, I've liked the previews for this movie. The previews have caught my attention, they've caught my eye, and I think there's really something for me to take away from here. And this is coming off of a time when In the Heights actually debuted in theaters over the summer and got a lot of good hype around it. I chose not to go see it because for whatever I had going on that week, and I just didn't see it. But if I'm being completely honest, it's like the story just has my interest, and maybe I'm being a little bit too kind to West Side Story, because the reality of it is December is a really quiet month in terms of movies. There's not really a whole ton of blockbusters that are coming out that I'm super interested in seeing. And if West Side Story had come out in October, when we had what Robert Meyer Burnett called the murderer's row of movies, which I thought was perfect. When you had Venom Let There Be Carnage, you had No Time to Die, you had Dune, you had there's 2 or 3 other movies I saw that month. I'm trying to remember what else I saw. After a while, after you see so many movies, it just kind of escapes you. But the point is, if West Side Story come out in October, I probably wouldn't have even gave it a second thought, and it wouldn't have even been on my radar. But the fact of the matter is, since there's not too many exciting movies for me to see in December, I'm going to go see West Side Story next weekend. So that's pretty much my verdict on West Side Story. The most I can say for it is directed by Spielberg, great reviews. It didn't come out in October. So that's enough for me to get my interest pumped up for the movie. And it's got to be somewhat of a testament to the marketing, because the trailers in and of itself were enough to get me excited, for me not liking really musicals that much to actually being kind of excited to see it. So good on West Side Story for that. West Side Story, my first anticipated month for the movie of December in chronological order. But next up is The Matrix Resurrections. Now, I have been a fan of the Matrix franchise since its inception. the first Matrix movie came out when I was super young, and I watched the first Matrix, Matrix Reloaded, Resurrections, Revolutions when I was younger, and I enjoyed all three, and I'm a big fan of Keanu Reeves and sci-fi action. So naturally, when the next installment in the franchise comes out and you've still got your original stars in Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves, who is, to me, Keanu Reeves is one of the GOAT actors when it comes to sci-fi action films. When you combine all of that into The Matrix Resurrections, of course I'm going to be pumped to see this movie. And then Lana Wachowski is coming back to direct this one, although one of the Wachowski brothers is not coming back, but I'll take one on too. That's not a bad bet at all. So naturally, I'm excited for this movie. I'm excited for it. I can't wait to see what Keanu does in that. And plus, I'm actually really excited to see a new Morpheus in Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, to me, really flourished, really shined in Candyman, which came out around October. That was Jordan Peele and oh my goodness, why am I blanking on the director's name for Candyman? Oh, I have to look this up. I cannot not look this up. I would not be doing her justice if I didn't. The director for Candyman, her and Jordan Peele did phenomenal directing that movie, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen really. Nia DaCosta, wow, I can't believe I forgot that. Nia DaCosta did phenomenal work with Candyman, so did Yahya Abdul-Mateen. So the fact that we get to see a charismatic guy like Yahya Abdul-Mateen play a charismatic, iconic character in Morpheus alongside the likes of Keanu Reeves, I'm excited to see that different flavor on Morpheus, and I'm curious to see what he'll do with it. And then when you combine all that with the trailers, let's be real, those trailers are some of the best I've seen all year. They just have this way of proposing high octane action, feeling of unease. I think that's the one thing with The Matrix that gets overlooked a little bit. It's the fact that The Matrix makes you feel a little uneasy. It's very dark, it's very gritty, it's very violent. And it makes you feel very unsure about life in general, because is this life? Is this a simulation? It's kind of like the idea they play off of in that one Rick and Morty episode. Are you a simulation? You know. But overall, to me, there's no doubt in my mind that at minimum, I'm going to at least enjoy this movie. If it turns out it sucks, so be it. I think I'll walk out with a smile on my face no matter what, but I think seeing this is going to be an early Christmas present to myself because it comes out on March 22nd, just a few days after Spider-Man No Way Home, so I guess I messed up the chronological order there. But there's one thing that's been on my mind about The Matrix Resurrections that really stinks, and the fact is, I don't know if it's really going to make a ton of money for a couple of reasons, and money's not everything. As long as I enjoy the movie, that's all I really care about. But The Matrix Resurrections is coming out just days after Spider-Man No Way Home. Not a week, like 5 days. Like, because Spider-Man No Way Home comes out on the 17th, Matrix Resurrections comes out on the 22nd. When you've got a general movie-going audience who has usually one choice, and they might go to a movie a month, maybe if not 4 or 5 times a year, and you've got this Spider-Man No Way Home movie that's been talked about for a year by the general public, more likely than not, on the second weekend of Spider-Man No Way Home opening, and they don't want to go to a packed theater, they're going to forego seeing Matrix Resurrections. They're probably going to go see Spider-Man No Way Home. So for that reason, I don't think Matrix Resurrections is going to have a very strong box office presence. And then when you stack that on top of the fact that it's debuting day and date on HBO Max, meaning the same day it's debuting in theaters, it's also coming out on HBO Max for HBO Max subscribers to watch, that for this year has not boded well for movies. The most recent example I can think of is King Richard. King Richard made almost nothing at the box office, and I think that is in large part due to the fact that it's on HBO Max, so you don't even have to go to the theater to go see it. You can just pop it in on HBO Max and save yourself a ton of time. And for the price of seeing or paying for a month subscription on HBO Max is pretty much the same price as it would be for a ticket, but you get to watch at home in your comfortable clothes. So I don't blame people for watching it at home, but that's just the reality of it, is when you release it and debut it the same day on HBO Max as it releases in theaters, you're going to make less money, and Matrix Resurrections is ticking all those boxes. So I don't anticipate Matrix Resurrections making a ton of money, but I anticipate it being a very exciting film. So that's my thought on The Matrix Resurrections. And now lastly, and I would argue probably my most anticipated movie of the month, although I'm not super pumped because I've enjoyed Homecoming and No Way Home, or Far From Home, excuse me, but I didn't love them. So I'm a little skeptical when it comes to No Way Home. But like I alluded to earlier, Spider-Man No Way Home, that's my last anticipated movie of the month. People have been talking about this movie for a year. Now, there's been a lot of talk. It's continued to build a lot of anticipation. So much so to the point where actually a lot of theater chains worldwide, their websites ended up crashing because of the amount of tickets that they ended up selling in pre-sales. I couldn't believe it. They sold a lot of tickets. I don't know how much money in tickets they sold, but they sold a lot of tickets. So clearly there is interest for this movie. And when you combine that with the eye-catching trailers that they've had and all the attention the trailers have been getting, who's punching Croc? I even put out a little segment from the last Coffee and Kernels episode about who I think is punching Croc. I think it's Ant-Man. I know, not a great theory, but I don't care. That's just my theory nonetheless, because it's fun and it's whimsical and it's probably dumb. But there's been a lot of speculation surrounding whether or not Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire in the movie. They keep denying it, or at least Andrew Garfield does vehemently. I genuinely don't believe they're in the movie, but a lot of people, a lot of very big fans of the Spider-Man franchise totally believe they are, and so be it. That's okay. I don't blame you at all, especially you probably know more about the Spider-Man universe than I do, because like I said, not a huge fan of Spider-Man, but with the potential return of many characters of the Spider-Man universe within the last 20 years, and my fondness for Tom Holland in general, I think, despite me not loving Homecoming and No Way Home, I think Tom Holland's actually been my favorite Spider-Man of all time. I can't wait to see this movie. I have enjoyed, when combining it with those other two factors, I've enjoyed every Marvel movie I have seen, ever. Every Marvel movie that's been in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, from Iron Man 1 all the way to Eternals most recently. I've enjoyed literally every movie. There's not a single movie that I did not like. Even Iron Man 2, I think I still relatively enjoyed. And also Thor 2. I actually thought Thor the Dark World was a little underrated. But the point is, with Marvel producing movies that I have liked at minimum, for all 23, 25 movies, whatever it is at this point, I fully expect for me to at least minimum like this movie, and with all the added intensity, baggage, and hype around it, I probably will like No Way Home the best out of the Tom Holland trilogy. So I have high hopes for this movie. I have very high hopes, and I have high hopes, but not high expectations, if that makes any sense. The point is, I'm not going to drag this on anymore. I'm excited to see this movie. Take that for what it's worth. So, with this movie's going to sell a lot of tickets. I think that it's going to be very crowded, very packed that first weekend. This movie is going to sell a lot of tickets, and I'm going to be purchasing one of them. So, friends, those are my most anticipated movies for the month of December. What's on your list? Some honorable mentions I'll throw in there. American Underdog, the one with Zachary Levi, that's surrounding Kurt Warner. That wasn't on my list. I'm not too excited. It seems like a typical sports biopic, but you might be excited, especially if you're a Kurt Warner fan. Another movie that's on this list, Nightmare Alley. It is Guillermo del Toro's most recent thriller, sci-fi sort of thing. I am not excited for it because I didn't really enjoy the trailer. I think when I did my original trailer talk for Nightmare Alley, I was a little too kind to it. I really didn't enjoy the trailer. In fact, I have no idea what the hell the movie's really about. And when a trailer fails to tell me what the movie's about, I have a hard time getting excited for it, which is why it didn't end up on my list, because the trailers were just not good. But anyways, those are some others on the list that might be on your radar. What's on your radar? You know where the comment section is. Let me know. Okay, so now that brings me into last weekend's box office results for the weekend of Thanksgiving. And that is, for those of you who don't know, the dates between, one moment, the weekend of November 26th through the 28th. That's where these box office results are coming from. What were the box office numbers from that weekend? What led the charge for the weekend debuting was Encanto at 27 million. In second place was Ghostbusters Afterlife, which was 24.5 million. In third, debuting at number 3 was House of Gucci at 14.2 million, which is the movie I ended up seeing for that weekend. Next up, Eternals, 7.9 million. And then fifth, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. That was the big surprise for me on this list at 5.3 million. We'll go in order, starting off with Encanto. So Encanto has gotten really awesome rave reviews. I believe for both critics and audiences, it's currently sitting at 90+%. So a lot of people have gone out and really enjoyed Encanto. And after seeing it myself, I agree. It is that good. It's amazing. I am a little surprised, to be honest, that an animated children's movie, because ultimately, to me, that's what Disney animated properties ultimately are. They're animated movies dedicated to a more of a child audience, but designed to be fun for the whole family. I'm a little surprised it debuted at number 1 for that, but I think that just shows a testament to how good the movie actually was. I didn't think it was enough to carry it to box office glory, but it has. It opened at number 1 for its first weekend, and plus the fact that Disney Animated Studios spit out hit after hit after hit, and it's very rare to where you'll watch a Disney animated film and you won't at least minimum enjoy it. Like, they just crap gold. And that was the case with this movie. I went in, I enjoyed it, and I'm not surprised it debuted number 1 at the box office. I'm curious to see what it'll do this weekend, the weekend that I'm recording it, which is December 4th. It'll actually be December 3rd through December 5th, but we'll have to wait and see. I think there's a chance, because of the fact that nothing really is debuting that's a blockbuster this weekend. I think there's actually a chance that Encanto stays at number 1 for the weekend. I just don't see, unless Ghostbusters Afterlife picks up like a phenomenal 3rd, 4th weekend of the box office, I don't see Encanto being dethroned. In fact, if I'm being honest, I don't really see any of these movies in the top 5 falling off the list, rather other than Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. Welcome to Raccoon City, I don't think will make much more money at this point. In fact, I think it might even break even or just lose money, but that's beside the point. So I think that there's a chance that Encanto stays at number 1 past this weekend. I'll find out tomorrow if that's the case. We'll have to wait and see. Number 2, Ghostbusters Afterlife. It dropped 1 spot from number 1 down to number 2, making 24.5 million. It had a strong second weekend in a row, and it honestly surpassed my expectations. Like I said, dropped from the number 1 spot to the number 2 spot, which I fully anticipated with the House of Gucci and Encanto both debuting. But it wasn't by a large margin. It was only beat up by Encanto by about $2.5 million, which is very slim in the movie-going box office world. And it only went down in box office gross by 55% domestically, which 50 to 60% in terms of the box office industry numbers domestically is pretty good. Like, that's like the range that is very solid, very acceptable. And if it's before that, you're going wild, because it shows that the movie's got legs, meaning that it can stay a long time in box office relevancy. But I think it's just straight up to the movie. The reason why I think it stayed up so high and had such a small drop is the fact that the movie's just that good. The big proof that a movie has the aptitude to stay in top 5 box office for so long is the fact that it's just a good movie. The only way a movie survives is by being good in terms of box office, and Ghostbusters Afterlife, I think, fits that bill. Plus the fact that Ghostbusters has been a franchise for like nearly 4 decades or 37 years now. And a lot of people, that spans a lot of people. It spans a very wide audience. The movie's rated PG-13. When you combine all that together, it's a perfect storm to make money. And Ghostbusters Afterlife is making a lot of money, and it's definitely doing way better than the 2016 Ghostbusters that I think ended up losing money at the end of the day. So I don't think it'd be crazy for Ghostbusters Afterlife to stay in the 2nd spot after this weekend, because like I said, nothing else is debuting, and all these other movies, I don't see them moving by a whole lot. In fact, if Encanto drops by enough, it could be possible that Ghostbusters Afterlife could go to 2 back up to 1. That would be shocking, but there's a chance. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Then in 3rd, which I saw over Thanksgiving weekend, House of Gucci, 14.2 million. It opened at 14.2 million over Thanksgiving weekend, which to me, from my inexperienced point of view, I don't think is really that great of a number. However, I was reading an article, I believe it was on Variety, saying that the 14.2 million for a crime drama opening on Thanksgiving weekend is actually pretty successful, which I find that really hard to believe. But I guess when you combine all that with pandemic era, maybe they have a point. To me, I still don't think it's a great opening, especially since its budget was way higher than 14.2 million. I believe its budget was like 75 million. I'd say it was a pretty medium-sized budget, 75 million, but I would say that I thought the movie was pretty great, and it looks like critics by and large agree with that particular sentiment. I don't believe the quality of the movie was to blame for the box office result. I think it's a matter of the fact that it didn't really cater to a wide demographic, and the fact is, House of Gucci, who does it really appeal to? It's a movie that is rated R. It's about a very small population. It's about one family. It's about the history, not the history, but it's about the history of the Gucci family and how one of their own was assassinated was assassinated. It's a story of his assassination. I'm trying to even remember what Mr. Gucci's first name was. This is what happens when you watch a ton of movies. You just forget things like that. But when you don't cater to a wide demographic at the box office, you're obviously not going to make a ton of money. And the people who will see this movie are likely an older audience, which hasn't gone back to the movie theaters quite yet for whatever reasons that they might have. And when you have a narrow demographic in general, it's not a recipe for awesome box office success. So I'm not surprised it stayed at 14.2 million. I hope that all movies, especially originals like House of Gucci, succeed, but the reality of it is, in the pandemic era, when you've got an original movie like this, it just doesn't make a ton of box office money. In fact, originals rarely do, which is just the reality of things. So House of Gucci, I wouldn't be surprised if it stayed at number 3, but I don't think it'll do much better than that. In fact, I think it might drop to number 5, but we'll have to wait and see. Then number 4, Eternals at 7.9 million. It dropped from the 2nd spot all the way down to the 4th spot. I don't really have too much to say on Eternals at this point. It's been out for a few weeks now. It's been the lowest critically acclaimed in terms of Rotten Tomatoes Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. People seem to either really enjoy it or really not enjoy it, which for whatever reason they might have. I'm not surprised it dropped a little bit. At this point, the movie's made over 300 million worldwide, so it's made money. The budget was 250, and if you account maybe for 50 million in marketing budget, the movie will probably make a few $1,000,000, like maybe 50 to 100 million, maybe not much more than that, depending. But I'm sorry. The movie had a budget of 200 million, so it's made about 100 million, but I'm anticipating the marketing budget was 50 million, so the movie technically cost 250. So the movie is making about $50 million. I anticipate at the end of the day, make 100. The reason why I say that the movie has a budget of 200 million and a separate marketing budget of 50 million is because when they give the budget of the movie, that doesn't include the marketing spend, for those of you who don't know. So you automatically tack on a little bit for marketing spend. So that's just the reason why I call those out individually, but who cares? Eternals at number 4, no surprises there, to be honest. But lastly, and the most interesting result on this list, and 4 and 5 of the box office for the last month or so has been the most interesting spot, is Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. To be honest, I am really shocked that a Resident Evil video game movie debuted in the top 5 on a weekend that typically isn't very popular amongst moviegoers. The big reason is because of the demographic that the Resident Evil movie is catering to. Now, the Resident Evil movies historically have not been great. There have been supporters and fans of the movies, and good on y'all for that, because the movies, I think, do have a little bit of merit to them. Me, I'm not a huge fan, but I can see where fans of the franchise are coming from. But the point is, I didn't hear great things about the movie. I haven't seen it myself, so take that for what it's worth when I give you these box office reasons. But I can say this. Its Rotten Tomatoes score is like under 30 the last time I checked, which was about 2 days ago. And most video game movies typically don't pan out. Most video game movies are pretty horrible. In fact, you could say that just about all of them are pretty bad, and it seems like Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is sort of the case here. Like I said, I am only going off of critics and audiences scores from Rotten Tomatoes. I have not seen the movie myself, and I don't plan on seeing the movie myself because I'm not really a Resident Evil movie fan. But the fact is, it caters to a really small demographic. You will likely see Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City if A, you really love the video game franchise, B, you love the movie franchise surrounding the video game franchise, or you just really like video games. And plus, the movie's rated R. So when you combine those 4 very small niches, And on a slow box office weekend, it's typically not a recipe for box office success. However, the movie's in the top 5 in terms of box office numbers for weekend, and the fact that it caters to such a small demographic, even smaller than that of House of Gucci, I think it makes it all the more impressive that it made as much money as it did. The thing that sucks is I don't think Resident Evil is going to make money, but then again, it might have a very large audience in Asian markets, but it's got a budget of 25 million. I would anticipate that it'd probably end up breaking even. I still have to look at the worldwide numbers as of today. But I don't think it'll be in the top 5 after this weekend. I think it'll have its time in the limelight domestically for that one weekend, but after that's going to fall off the face of the earth. So that's where I stand on the box office from last weekend. Any surprises for you guys? What do you think is going to top for this weekend? Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is. Let me know. All right, let's go into my random thought of the week. My random thought for this week. Now, as I said earlier, I developed over Thanksgiving this obsession for Spider-Man. The reason being is because Black Friday sales were happening for physical media, 4K discs. And so Far From Home and Into the Spider-Verse were on my mind, but I just ended up grabbing Into the Spider-Verse. The one thing that has really bothered me about the digital media age, I can't even really say it bothers me, it's just different. The one thing that's different about the digital media age is the fact that you can buy 4K quality films and movies that don't require disc. They can be streamed over your internet connection. However, the one thing I've noticed between digital media and physical media, for reasons that I can't quite articulate because I still have to do more research on, physical discs to me produce a much better, much more true 4K high quality picture than 4K digital. I'm trying to figure out what the science is behind that, but after watching Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and seeing the perfect, wonderful colors on my LG 4K TV, I almost never want to buy another digital movie again, because to me, I am a quality picture snob. I love a good picture. I love a really good graphic. I love really good refresh rates. And that is best captured with the physical disc. I think that physical discs have a way of being able to handle some sort of capacity more. Like I said, I'll have to do more research on that. But just watching Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse on 4K physical was just beautiful. The reason why it was so apparent to me when watching Into the Spider-Verse on physical media was the fact that the night before, this was Friday night, I watched Far From Home on 4K digital. I rented it from Xbox. And although the picture looked good and the refresh rate was good, there was something about it that was missing. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was until I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse a couple hours later on 4K disc, and I'm like, oh my god. On 4K disc, the colors, the pictures are just so crisp. They're so defined. You can really see, you can really feel the picture and the pixels within it that just digital media just doesn't capture. And plus, the thing that sucks with digital media is the fact that it can buffer when you're streaming it over your internet connection. Therefore, the picture quality is bound to suffer at some point in the movie. With 4K disc, you don't have to worry about bandwidth. You don't have to worry about any lag. You don't have to worry about a picture degrading and then going back to up to 4K again. It is a constant 4K picture through and through, and it's just beautiful. And now I will champion physical media until the day I die. And the fact is, when you buy physical media, you can also get your own digital copy if you'd like to, but that's a whole nother story altogether. But I'm floored by 4K physical media. I really appreciate it. I have to do more research as to how it works better than digital media, but all I know is if you want the clearest, absolute best 4K experience possible, my friends, buy it on 4K physical disc if you can, or borrow it from a friend, because that's the one way you will get the best possible picture. Watch it on a 4K TV if you can, play it on your Blu-ray player. When you combine those three, you're in for a damn good time. So keep that in mind. That was my random thought of the week. Where do you guys stand on the whole digital media, physical media conversation? I know physical media is a thing that's dying for many reasons that I can totally understand, especially since I have Xbox Game Pass and I stream a lot of my games. But where do you guys stand on that? I'd be interested in starting dialogue between you and me on that. Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is. Let me know. Okay. Now, let's get into the last segment of the episode before we call it an evening, which is the weekly recommendations. You guys know how this goes. I give you a movie, I give you a TV show, and I give you a video game to recommend for the upcoming week in case you're bored and you're looking for something else to watch. This week, I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to go in reverse order from TV show all the way down to movie. I'm going to give you multiple movies to watch. We'll start off with TV show. My parents have been championing this show called Foundation, which is on HBO. I don't know anything about it, full disclosure. All I know is my parents have been ranting and raving about it, both of them. When they both like something, it generally means it's pretty good. So Foundation, HBO Max, check it out. The next thing that I will recommend to you, a video game, which I've already talked about on this podcast episode, which is A Plague Tale Innocence. Like it, love it, go play it. It's on Xbox Game Pass for those of you who are Game Pass subscribers. I can't recall off the top of my head if A Plague Tale Innocence is an exclusive or not, but if you have an Xbox, you got Game Pass, go download it now. You got nothing to lose. Give it about an hour before you make your decision on whether or not you want to stick with it. It took me an hour to figure out if I wanted to stick with it or not. I'm happy I stuck it through because the story is incredible. It's unique. It's refreshing. The combat is unique and refreshing. You won't be disappointed by it. Now, lastly, I'll give you 4 movie recommendations for this week. They're all Christmas movies, and they're going to be Christmas movies all month long. So we've got number 1, we're going to have Elf. Number 2, we're going to have National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Number 3, we're going to have Polar Express. Number 4, we're going to have A Grinch Stole Christmas, Jim Carrey's version. Those 4 movies should be able to get you through the week. They got me through this week in terms of December. They're all fantastic holiday classics. I really enjoy watching each and every one of them. You're in for a good time with all of them. So, my friends, those are my movie recommendations for the week. What are your recommendations? I would love to hear if you guys have any that I should keep my eyes out for, what your fellow fans should keep their eyes out for. Whatever they are, you know where the comment section is. Let me know. Well, my friends, we have come to the end of another phenomenal episode of Coffee and Kernels. Once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining me for another episode and for sticking with me past the Thanksgiving break. This has been the Bankrupt Hippo YouTube channel. I've been Bryce. This has been Coffee and Kernels. And until next week, have a great week.